The Hunger Games movie is coming out really soon. That's why I'm wearing my Josh Hutcherson shirt. But I thought it would be fun to go through like what we already know about the series, go through Katniss and Peeta's story, because I love Peeta so much. But I kind of want to go through the story chronologically, which means we will be starting with President Snow's story. And your reaction to that should be, because why? Like, why am I invested in a story without Peeta? But here's the thing. It's interesting to see what his perspective is, what his story is. I found it interesting at least to see like how he goes about justifying murdering all these children, how he justifies all of his actions. And spoiler alert, the answer is he is the epitome of gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. He gaslights everyone around him so much, manipulates everyone around him. Like, with that being said, like, is he a monster? Yeah, he is. Even though, you know, he has people who love him, even though he feels guilty at times. Where's my sympathy for him? Where is it? I don't see it. But yeah, anyway, so for some backstory, so President Snow's name is a little bit hard to pronounce for me personally, just because I have no sort of guidance. And I am very, very bad with trying to pronounce names on my own without any sort of direction. So I believe it's probably supposed to be pronounced Coriol. I break it up in my head into Coriol and Anus, because he's an ass. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just gonna call him Snow. So we've got Snow, we've got his cousin Tigress. She's smart in that she does what it takes to survive, but she's just in general like a very nice and caring person. And then we've got his grandma, their grandma, which they call Grandmam. So basically, the Snows were once a very powerful family in the capital, but they have since fallen off because they invested all of their assets in District 13, and as we've seen later on, District 13 is, it was like blown up in the war, I believe. And so because they didn't really diversify their investments, all of their money went down the drain and they're pretty much broke. The Grandmam, because she's used to like living in a higher society, being well respected, she's kind of in straight up denial the whole time because she thinks that they're still like a well-respected family. She's very much into tending to her roses. That's where the whole rose thing comes in. And I'm gonna put a little face mask on, and you know, don't get me wrong. The irony isn't lost on me, the fact that I'm like pampering myself while talking about the government murdering a bunch of children. But what can I say? I'm just a girl. Plus, like, how could I say no to this? So anyway, we're taking place right now in the 10th annual Hunger Games, so it's only been going on for 10 years, and as you know, the Hunger Games takes one girl and one boy tribute from each district and has them fight to the death, with one being victorious. And the reason being is that districts had a little uprise, not a little, a major uprise against the capital. The capital won that war, and this is the district's punishment for attacking them in the first place. So now all the capital people, they're like, well, this is justified because the districts had, like, they had us undergo all of these horrible conditions, like we were starving. But here's the thing, so when in the Hunger Games books, when we're at the time of Peeta and Katniss and everybody, all of the capital people were really invested in the games. Like, you know, they were betting on them, they loved to see all the costumes and like the parading around the arena and whatever, and the sponsored items. Like, that was all already established when we were reading the Hunger Games with Katniss and Peeta. But this, where the games are barely established, the capital people, they may think that it's justified. Some even don't think it's justified, but they may think that it's, you know, okay to do this because of what the districts did to them. But with that being said, they don't enjoy seeing the district kids kill each other. Like, you know, these capital people aren't monsters, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot to go into this. And so the question that the game makers are asking themselves right now is, how do we make the Hunger Games more appealing to the capital audience? And that's why this year in the 10th Hunger Games, they're introducing the idea of mentors. And Snow has been chosen to be one of the 24 mentors. People don't know that the Snow family is broke because Snow has been doing such a good job of keeping that under wraps. He pretends to be rich 24/7, is an arrogant little shit. But there's this scholarship that he will be able to attain if he has like impressive achievements, such as being a mentor of a tribute that does well, or even better, the victor. He ends up getting this girl named Lucy Gray from District 12, And the other character that I should probably point out to you right now is this guy named Sejanus, another anus name, Sejanus. Anyway, Sejanus is like the new money trope. So whereas Snow would be old money, you know, he's been a part of the powerful family in the district or in the capital for a while. Sejanus got wealthy because of, I forget why. Because his family got so wealthy, he was able to move from District 2 into the capital. And so because there's a stigma about district people, he wasn't totally accepted. But Snow has been nice to him. Not really, he's just been kind of like tolerant of him. But he's only been tolerant of him because he thinks that getting in with their family could possibly benefit him down the road. Everything that Snow does is for selfish reasons, for him to become more powerful or to get ahead of the pack. But Sejanus is a really sweet soul. He's trying to be like ethically, morally good the entire time. He's trying to do what he thinks is right. And he ends up becoming a mentor and getting his old friend from District 2. So he's mentoring like one of his old classmates from District 2 and he's like, oh my god, this is ridiculous. So Lucy Gray, her whole big thing is that she is a performer. On the day of the reaping, she came out in this big colorful dress, dropped a snake down the mayor's daughter's dress, got slapped by the mayor himself, and then started singing on the stage. Because she's a part of the Coveys, which are like now this group of kids that have like banded together to perform for a living. So Snow was like, oh wow, maybe I've actually got a chance to do something impressive with this girl, because when he originally got a District 12 girl, he was like, oh my god, like there's no way in hell that she's gonna win. So he's like, might as well make good publicity out of this. So he goes to meet Lucy Gray before he's even supposed to. And he ends up getting thrown in with the tributes. He gifted her a rose and she ate it. She ate one of the petals of the rose. So anyway, he gets thrown in with the tributes and they actually try and kill him, and he immediately goes for the nuts shot, nuts or nothing. He plays dirty, that should tell you something. And then he gets thrown into the monkey house at the zoo. So this is where they currently keep the tributes. Unlike the 74th Hunger Games, where everybody was treated with like, you know, the utmost luxury, at this point they were treating the tributes like fucking dog shit. They put them in the monkey house, didn't give them anything to eat, and then threw them in the arena. Most of them probably starved to death before they even got a chance to fight. But you have to remember, at this point, like, having the public be actively involved in the Hunger Games wasn't really a thought in anybody's mind. This was just a thing that everybody needed to endure to punish the districts. Snow met with Dr. Gall, who is the head game maker of the games, and she is crazy. She is vicious. She is cruel. She has this ideology that humans are inherently evil, and it doesn't take much to bring out that evil, and like everybody's just savage. And she also thinks that peace doesn't exist. We're just in a state of endless war. And then we've got the Dean Highbottom, who does not like Snow at all because Snow reminds him of his father. Dean Highbottom is the person who created the idea of the Hunger Games, but he did so when he was drunk as a joke, and Snow's father took it seriously, sent it into Dr. Gall maybe, or who sent it into someone, and it became real. So Dean Highbottom is kind of like plagued by what he's done, and he kind of blames it on Snow and Snow's father. I should mention, by the way, that Snow is an orphan. Both of his parents died. So because Snow met with his tribute before he was supposed to, he gets a demerit, and if he gets enough of those, he will be expelled. But because of this incident, Dr. Gall takes a kind of liking to him because she's like, you have a little bit of that something, and that something is jackassery. And I'm gonna really foster that. So because the tributes aren't being fed, Sejanus starts feeding him, and Snow helps him because he wants Lucy Gray to be fed. And you know, they're kind of sparks flying between Snow and Lucy Gray. A weird pair if you think about it, because they're pretty much polar opposites, but you know what they say. Then the tributes and the mentors formally met. Between Snow and Lucy Gray, there was a little bit of flirting, you know? They also bonded over the fact that they were both orphans. And then people started feeding the tributes, like people of the capital, and people were starting to grow attached to the tributes, started feeling very comfortable with them, until a mentor was taunting her tribute, and the tribute got close enough to grab onto her and slit her throat. So then that mentor died and the tribute was shot on site, which caused a little bit of a ruckus. And basically before this happened, Snow and a couple of his other mentors were given this assignment to come up with a way to make the games like more appealing to the capital people. And Snow came up with the idea of like having capital people put bets on the tributes, and also like the whole sponsored gifts idea. And he submitted that proposal, and then him and this other girl named Clementia visited Dr. Gall, and Dr. Gall was like, hey, who did this assignment? Like, was it you both, or was it just Snow? And Clementia was like, no, we both like did it equally. And then here's where it gets fucking weird. So Dr. Gall is a scientist, and she is the one who like, I don't know if she started this whole thing, but she creates a lot of the mutations. And she made these killer snakes, but they won't kill you if they're accustomed to your scent. And so she kind of like dangled the report in the snake pit, and it only had Snow's scent on it. So then she was like, okay, each of you stick your arm in the snake pit. And the snakes don't do anything to Snow, obviously, because they're accustomed to the scent. But then they bit Clementia, and then Clementia started turning into a snake. And then she was sent to the hospital, and Snow was like, what the fuck just happened? Clementia didn't fully turn into a snake. She just kind of like grew scales and her tongue got all weird. But she was in the hospital for a while, and the Dr. Gall didn't like tell anybody about the incident. Like nobody said a word about what happened to Clementia. They just said that she was sick to cover it up. And then Snow and the other mentors in the tributes went to tour the arena when the rebels, they probably must have like planted a bunch of bombs, and all these bombs started going off, and Lucy Gray saved Snow's life, which I'm sure she regrets that. And what ended up happening in this explosion is that a bunch of mentors and tributes died, and then Marcus, the boy from District 2, the tribute from District 2, ended up escaping. So then, right before Lucy Gray is about to go into the arena, she's like, listen, you need to take me seriously as a tribute, and you need to actually help me win. And Snow is like, okay, I got you. He gives her his mother's compact, which is very precious to him, and hints that she should fill it with rat poison, which is against the rules, but he was willing to do whatever it takes to win, as well as to save his love, because then they kiss. And so you're like, oh, okay, he is capable of falling in love. That was a little bit of a plot twist. And now the actual Hunger Games are nothing to compare to the 74th Hunger Games that we're accustomed to. The cameras don't move, and they're only limited, so for a while we don't really see the tributes because they're hiding. We have no way of like knowing who's where. The sponsored gifts and the betting are new additions to these games, so you know there are a lot of kinks to work out. Marcus, the one who escaped, was tortured and then put up on display for everyone to see, which caused Sejanus to leave and go into a spiral, and then suddenly he was missing. And you want to know why? It's because he decided to enter the arena himself. He wanted to like give Marcus a proper burial, and you know what? He kind of wanted the tributes to kill him. And so Dr. Gall sent Snow into the arena to save him. And Snow, in self-defense, ended up bashing one of the tributes to death, and they both sustained a lot of injuries, him and Sejanus, but they ended up escaping. Even though I don't like Snow, he is hilarious, I gotta say. To give you a sense of what he's like, this is his internal monologue. Honestly, who cares? His entire future was on the line because of her wayward son. That wayward son is Sejanus, by the way. So then after this whole shebang, Sejanus' family was like, okay, because we're rich, we'll give a full ride scholarship to the mentor whose tribute it becomes the victor. And so now Snow is like, okay, well, I've gotta win this thing now. Dr. Gall put the snakes in the arena, but because Snow dropped Lucy's handkerchief into the snake pit when he had the chance, because he had a sneaking suspicion that they were going to put the snakes in the games, the snakes were kind of like drawn to Lucy and like kind of wrapped around her in a protective shield skirt thing. A lot of the tributes died before they even entered the arena, and a lot of the tributes in the arena died of natural causes, but Lucy ended up killing 3 of them, 2 with the sneaky rat poison and 1 with a snake. And so, thus, Lucy ended up being the victor of the 10th annual Hunger Games. And so you may be thinking that Snow's problems are all over, but that is not the case, because the Dean Highbottom called him into his office and he was like, dude, we know that you've been smuggling food to the tributes, we know about the compact filled with rat poison, and we know about the handkerchief that you put into the snake pit. And so, as punishment, they sent Snow to become a peacekeeper. And so he goes to District 12, Lucy Gray gets sent back to District 12, and guess who also joins them in District 12? Sejanus, because he's like, you know what, maybe I can become some sort of medic and help the people out, but was he able to do that? No. To make matters worse for him, their apartment complex was being taxed, and so his family, Tigress and his grandmam, would no longer be able to afford their apartment, which was like the only thing they had left. So Snow was like, shit, this is rock bottom for me. Lucy Gray, she rejoins all of her bandmates and starts performing at the Hub. And then Snow and his peacekeeper buddies, they start going to the Hub to see her performances. And the first night, they almost reunite when Lucy Gray's old boyfriend named Billy comes crashing in and starts a full-on brawl. And so the next day, Snow is like, how am I supposed to see my Lucy Gray? And Sejanus is like, well, I heard she lived in the seam. So together they go to the scene, they find her house, and Snow and Lucy Gray reunite and they kiss, and all is well until Sejanus and Billy start talking, and Billy is like, you know, part of like the whole rebel people, and one of the rebels is currently in jail, and so he needed like info on how to possibly help her escape, and Sejanus was helping Billy, and Snow sees this, and Snow was like, Sejanus, what are you doing? Like, you're conspiring with the rebels. You cannot do that. Also, I forgot to mention that while Snow and Lucy Gray were reuniting, she played him the Hanging Tree song, and so she was the one who wrote the Hanging Tree song, fun fact. So Snow was like, how am I supposed to get out of this situation? Well, I can rise the ranks of the peacekeepers, and in order to do that, he takes this officer's test, and because he's smarter than a lot of people in the districts, because he's been educated in the rich capital, he thinks he's probably going to do well. So he takes the officer's test, and then a bunch of scientists from the capital come to District 12 because they're trying to round up the Jabberjays and the Mockingjays for whatever reason. This is where we find out that Snow hates Mockingjays because they're kind of like a freak of nature. If you think about it, they were never supposed to happen, and Snow was all about control, not about freedom and chaos. He thinks that freedom and chaos are like what lead people to show their inner savagery. One of his last good days are when he and Lucy Gray and the Covey and Sejanus go to this lake, and they have a little lake day. And he finds out about how all of the Covey are named after like songs. Someone starts playing Lucy Gray's song, and this is what he thinks. Oh, a ghost story. Ugh, boo, so ridiculous. Not him being part of the Sassy Man apocalypse, oh my god. So now Snow is really suspicious of Sejanus because even though he talks Sejanus through the whole not wanting to be a rebel thing, Sejanus, he still is set on being a rebel and doing the right thing. So, Sejanus eventually confesses to Snow about what his plans are and how he's going to help the rebel girl in jail escape, and they're going to escape north to their people who live outside the districts, and Snow records Sejanus' whole confession by use of a Jabberjay and sends that Jabberjay off. He later regrets that decision, but he's also like, if Sejanus is going down, I cannot possibly go down with him. And so then this is the night where all this shit goes down. So it's a normal Saturday night where Lucy Gray and the Covey are performing with the Hob. Sejanus sneaks out during the performance, and then Snow follows him, and then Lucy Gray follows Snow, and they all end up in this barn. So it's the three of them plus this other rebel named Spruce and Billy, the ex-boyfriend. And then they're all discussing how they're going to go about this. Are they all going to escape together? And then the mayor's daughter comes waltzing in because the mayor's daughter has been seeing Billy, who's Lucy Gray's ex, and it turns out that the reason that Lucy Gray was called to be the tribute for District 12 was because the mayor's daughter pulled strings because the mayor's daughter was jealous of Lucy Gray. And so, to protect Lucy Gray, Snow shoots the mayor's daughter, kills her, and Billy is about to do something rash, so Spruce, the other rebel, shoots Billy and kills him. They all leave, and people end up eventually finding the bodies, but no one really suspects them until Spruce the next day is dragged in to the jail, bloody and battered, and Snow is like, oh my god, like he was in charge of the murder weapon. What if they find my DNA on the murder weapon, and if this gets out, like my life is ruined? So Snow is internally freaking out. Spruce ends up dying because of his wounds. But then Sejanus gets arrested because of the Jabberjay that Snow sent to Dr. Gall, and Sejanus and the girl, the rebel girl who was in the jail, get publicly hanged. So now all of these people are dead. So then the Coveys, the band, were able to go into the Peacekeeper base to celebrate the commander's birthday, and this is where Lucy Gray and Snow get to talk for one last time. And Lucy Gray is like, the mayor is convinced that I've killed his daughter. He's had it out for me, like, what do I do? And then Snow and Lucy Gray decide to run away together. Also, the song that Lucy Gray sang that night at the commander's birthday was about Snow being like so pure and so good and how much you trust him. Bitch, what? So then Snow and Lucy Gray, they go their separate ways, and Snow is getting ready to leave when he gets pulled aside by the commander and is like, congratulations, you've passed the officer's test, you're leaving tomorrow morning to go to this super fancy school. And so Snow was like, you know, if the murder weapon wasn't out and about, like, all of my problems would be solved. But he decides to go with Lucy Gray anyway, and Lucy Gray was like, wow, if you didn't show up, like, I wouldn't have the courage to leave, and Snow was like, ugh. So then, they decide to visit the lake that they visited before one last time before heading north. And on the way there, Snow lets it sip. He's like, you know, I can't believe I've killed 3 people. And Lucy Gray was like, 3? I thought it was 2. And he was like, and she was like, yeah, you know, you killed that tribute in the arena. You killed the mayor's daughter. Who on earth is the 3rd one? And he was like, oh, myself. The old me is dead and gone. And she was like, Then they get to the lake, and there's this house by the lake. And Snow enters the house by the lake and sees that the gun that he shot the mayor's daughter with is there, along with all of the other incriminating weapons. And he's like, I have no reason to go along with this stupid fucking plan. And then Lucy, she's like, oh, I'm gonna go harvest some Katniss. And so while he's looking at the guns, he's like, I can kill Lucy Gray, and then all my loose ends will be fucking dead and gone. But Lucy Gray, she's a smart one, that Lucy Gray. So she figured out that Snow must have been referring to Sejanus instead of himself when he was talking about the 3 people that he killed. So Lucy Gray was running away, and when Snow realized that she knew as well, he started running after her. She ended up setting this trap with the snake, and he got bitten, and he thought he was gonna die, so he started firing with his gun into the woods like crazy. She let out a yelp, and all the mockingjays were like making him all confused. But to this day, we still don't know whatever happened to Lucy Gray. We don't know if she's alive, she's dead, like her song, like the Ghost Story song. So Snow, he ended up being sent back to the capital, back to Dr. Gall, who had since erased all evidence of the 10th annual Hunger Games because of all the shit that went wrong. He is now her apprentice, basically, studying at university. The Plinths, which is Sejanus' last name, having lost their only son, pretty much adopted Snow and his family. They paid for the apartment, all of his fucking expenses and worries are gone. And to top it off, Snow killed Dean Highbottom with rat poison at the end of the book. I'm curious to see how closely this book is going to, or the movie is going to follow this book. So now let's talk about the Hunger Games. The Hunger Games are so good. So this takes place a while later. It's the 74th Hunger Games. Katniss, Prim, her mother, her dad died in a mine explosion. Katniss' situation is like this. One of her really main concerns is protecting Prim. Prim is only entered into the Hunger Games once. Katniss knows how to hunt. She goes hunting with this guy named Gale. Gale is this dude that likes Katniss, but he is also kind of a revolutionary. He hates the government, hates what it's doing, and for good reason, you know? So it's the day of the Hunger Games, and the girl tribute is being picked, and guess who it is? It's Prim. Primrose Everdeen, which is such a shock because out of all of the people's names, she was only entered once, so her chances were as slim as possible, but yet she was still picked. And because Katniss would rather do anything than let her sister die, she volunteered as tribute and took Prim's place. The boy tribute that was picked is Peeta! Peta is this sweet, sassy boy. His family is a family of bakers. He has several older brothers, none of which volunteered as tribute for him. But here's the thing though, Peta and Katniss know each other, not really, but they've had one interaction in which Katniss was on the verge of dying of starvation, and Peta saw this and burnt loaves of bread on purpose so that she would have food. He threw her these loaves of bread in the rain. It was a magical moment that started it all. So now Katniss and Peta are being sent off. Katniss is given this Mockingjay pin by the mayor's daughter as a little token. And so now, from this moment on, Katniss symbolizes the Mockingjay. And that's significant because, as we've seen from the prequel book, Snow hates Mockingjays. Mockingjays represent freedom, in a sense, rebellion, all of those good things. One of the things that I love about the Hunger Games series is having Katniss as a narrator, because I love her so much. Her thought process is so fucking funny, especially in the way that she perceives Peta. For example, when Katniss and Peta shake hands on stage the day of the reaping when they're both chosen as tribute, well, she took Prim's place, but whatever, he gave her hand a reassuring squeeze, and she was like, ugh, what a weird hand spasm. And then when Peta's dad came to visit her and gave her cookies for the road, she threw them out the window because she was like, what am I supposed to do with these? I don't want to owe anybody anything. Like, how am I supposed to interpret this gesture? So anyway, they go on the super fast train and are being taken to the capital, and on this train, Peta and Katniss meet Haymitch, who is going to be their mentor, but the thing is that Haymitch is a drunk and he is in no way, shape, or form able to help them. And when they ask him if he has any advice, he's like, stay alive or don't die or some shit like that. And Peta's like, that's very funny, only not to us. And then Katniss almost stabs his hand, and then Haymitch is like, well, we've got fighters this year. So when the tributes are being presented to the world, they're put in these costumes that represent their district. Katniss and Peta's stylists are Cinna and Portia respectively, and they set them on fire. Not literally, but also not, because it's not real fire, but it made definitely a very big impression on the people. They also told Katniss and Peta to hold hands, which was a little bit of a rebellious act because you're not really supposed to make bonds with the tributes because you're supposed to be killing each other in the arena. So Katniss and Peta, they get to the room that they're staying in before they're sent into the arena, and Katniss recognizes this Avix, and this Avix is a traitor who has had their tongue cut off as punishment and are subject to a life of servitude after the fact. And she has to cover it up because you're not really supposed to know Avixes. But then later in the night, Peta and Katniss go up to the roof and he's like, can you explain? And so she does. And then I think she either mentions Gale or Gale comes up somehow, and Peta's like, so are y'all related? You know, just so we're clear where we all stand here. And so then Haymitch starts coaching them because then they're about to go into these training sessions, and he's like, so have y'all got any strengths? And then Peta's like, I can bake bread. And then Katniss is like, well, I mean, I can shoot, but like, that's not really a big deal. And Peta's like, yes, the fuck it is. She shoots those squirrels in the eye. Yes, she does. And then Katniss is like, well, what about you? I mean, you are runner-up in all the wrestling competitions, only second to your brother, and you can lift all those bags of flour. And so that's kind of cute and sweet because they've both been paying attention to each other. But then Peta is all like, no, Katniss, I have no chance of winning these games. You want to know what my mother said to me? You want to know the last thing that my mother said to me? She's a survivor, that one. She, meaning she thinks that District 12 may have a victor, but it won't be me. And she was like, well, if I win, that's only because someone helped me. Bread flashbacks. And then when they're talking about Katniss's likability, Peta's like, she has no idea the effect she can have. And Katniss in her head, she's like, what do you mean by that? What effect do I have? That I'm weak and needy? That comment was obviously meant to demean me. So in their training, they're told by Haymitch to stick together, not show off their skills, but like learn a few survival tips and tricks. But then they are assessed one by one and given a score. And this is for like all the betting purposes, and Peta gets an 8 and Katniss gets an 11. Because she shot an arrow at the game makers. Forgot to point that out. 11 is like almost the highest score you can get. And then right before they go into the arena, they have this interview thing so the Capitol gets an idea of their personality. And Peeta, right before this interview, asks to be coached separately, and Katniss is like, betrayal? And so the day of the interview comes, Katniss is pretty charming, but then it's Peeta's turn. Let's open our books, shall we? Caesar asks him if he has a girlfriend back home. Peeta hesitates, then gives an unconvincing shake of his head. Handsome lad like you, there must be some special girl. Come on, what's her name? Says Caesar. Peeta sighs. Well, there is this one girl. I've had a crush on her ever since I can remember, but I'm pretty sure she didn't know I was alive until the reaping. Sounds of sympathy from the crowd. Unrequited love they can relate to. She have another fellow? Asks Caesar. I don't know, but a lot of boys like her, says Peeta. So here's what you do. You win, you go home, she can't turn you down then, eh? Says Caesar encouragingly. I don't think it's gonna work out. Winning won't help in my case, says Peeta. Why ever not? Says Caesar, mystified. Peeta blushes beet red and stammers out, because she came here with me. This really throws Katniss for a loop. She is horrified. She is embarrassed. She pushes Peeta into an urn and gets his hands all cut up. And she's like, why would you do that? You made me look weak. And then Haymitch was like, no, he made you look desirable, which is one thing you could never do for yourself. And then Peeta was all like, no, she's just mad because she's worried about her boyfriend. But he's like, don't worry, I didn't say you loved me. Even when he's making public confessions for Katniss's own safety, he is being considerate of Gale. That is crazy. The night before they're sent into the arena, Katniss and Peeta can't sleep, so they end up on the roof, and Peeta's like, I wish I could be more than some piece in their games. I want to be able to die as myself. And Katniss is like, no offense, Peeta, but who cares? Just stay alive. And Peeta was all like, thanks for the tip, sweetheart. Give my mother my best. Oh my god. So then, they're in the games. They're all surrounding the cornucopia. Katniss sees a bow and arrow. She's about to go after it, which is against Haymitch's instructions to run straight the fuck the other way. But just before she's about to go for the bow and arrow, she catches a glimpse of Peeta, who is shaking his head condescendingly, and that convinces her to go the other way, leave the bow. But dude, she is so mad at Peeta for distracting her. Oh my god, her internal monologue. Hilarious. So then she escapes from the cornucopia pretty much unscathed, and her first mission is to find water. We don't really know what Peeta is doing at this time, but we will soon find out. Then they show whoever died in the arena that day in the sky in the nighttime, and she sees that Peeta didn't die, and she was like, well, I guess I'm glad that Peeta survived, just because if he won, District 12 would get food, and that would be good for Prim. For Prim, I'm sure. For Prim, that's why you're glad he's alive. And then eventually Katniss is up in a tree and she hears the career pack coming her way, which are a group of like tributes who banded together. They're all really strong, and she hears one among them that she recognizes, and that is Peeta. So she's like, oh my fucking god, Peeta joined the career pack. What a betrayal. He is dead to me. Then Katniss almost dies of dehydration. She gets fireballs shot at her, and eventually the fireballs and fire draw the career pack and Katniss together, and so they start chasing after her, and she climbs up into this tree and she's trapped. But she sees Rue across the way, and Rue is like, look up, girl. And she looks up and she sees this tracker jacker nest. And so she decides to saw it off and drop it on the unsuspecting career pack and Peeta, who is currently dead to her, if you might remember. Katniss gets stung a bunch of times. Everybody down there gets stung a bunch of times. Some of them die because of the stings, because you only need to be stung a couple times for the venom to like cause you to have these crazy hallucinations. So through the hallucination haze, Katniss manages to grab the bow and arrow, but she's kind of disoriented. And that's when Peeta comes crashing through the woods, because he was the first one back to the tree, because all the others escaped to the water to escape the tracker jackers. And he sees her and he's like, what are you still doing here? Get up and run, like get out of here. And Katniss is like, what? So she stumbles away, and then he starts fighting Cato, who wants to get to Katniss. And this is where we realize, oh my god, he has been playing them this whole time. He's been a good protective boy. So then the last thing we see of Peeta is him fighting Cato. But now we're in Katniss's POV. We're in Katniss's POV the whole time. She pairs up with Rue. She allies with Rue. I didn't even explain who Rue was. I'm just assuming you kind of know who she was. She is this, one of the youngest, smallest tributes, but she can fly through the trees. She's got good instincts, and that's why Katniss and her decide to team up, and they decide to blow up the career's food supply, because they're not really too good on survival skills because all they need is like sheer brute force violent tactics. So Katniss manages to blow up their food supply because the careers made a trap with mines surrounding the food supply, but Katniss used that against them and lost hearing in her left ear because of the explosions. Rue got caught up in a fight with one of the District 1 boys, got stabbed in the chest. Katniss shot him right there and then on the spot when she came to see, what was going on with Rue. And then she sang Rue to death and then covered her in flowers before her body was picked up by the hovercraft. And this is when they get an announcement in the arena saying that 2 people can win the Hunger Games if they're from the same district. And this is when Katniss shouts out, "Peeta!" So she goes to the stream, and this is what her thought process was. He needs some sort of water source. He's alive but apparently wounded. She also thought he's very hard to predict, which might be interesting under different circumstances, but at the moment only provides an extra obstacle. Different circumstances? So she ends up finding him by the stream in camouflage, which was his last defense, and she didn't even see him at first, and he said, "You here to finish me off, sweetheart?" And then get this, he asks her to lean down and whispers in her ear, "Remember, we're supposed to be madly in love, so it's alright to kiss me anytime you feel like it." So at this point, the relationship between Katniss and Peeta is a little bit fuzzy because it is sort of an understanding that it's their strategy to pretend to be in love, but is it pretend? Is it not? Who's to say? So Katniss is tending to Peeta's wounds, which are pretty major. It's looking like that cut on his leg that Cato gave him is probably gonna kill him. But she's very queasy, and to distract her, Peeta mouths, "How about that kiss?" which causes Katniss to have a reaction, and he's like, "Something wrong?" And then Katniss was all like, "Killing things is way easier than this, although for all I know I am killing you." And then Peeta was like, "Can you speed it up a little?" And then Katniss was like, "No, shut up and eat your pears." And then Katniss was trying to like clean him up, and she was like, "Cover yourself and I'll wash your shorts." And he said, "Oh, I don't care if you see me." And so the thing about Haymitch and Peeta's relationship versus Katniss and Haymitch's relationship, Haymitch has been paying extra special attention to Katniss, has been sending her sponsored things, has been sort of communicating to her depending on what he sends or doesn't send. Meanwhile, Peeta has been sent nothing, and he finds out about this whole thing and he was like, "Damn, he's sending you stuff? I always knew you were the favorite." Well, she is the Mockingjay, sir. She is the Mockingjay. Then they end up taking shelter in a cave, and Peeta starts talking about if he doesn't make it, and Katniss is like, "Shut up, I won't hear that." And Peeta's like, "Well, if I don't," and then to shut him up, she kisses him. And then she says, "You won't die, I forbid it, all right?" And then Peeta's like, "All right." And then the next morning, this is what Katniss is thinking from her POV. Then he smiles as if he'd be happy to lie there gazing at me forever. He's great at this stuff. Is he great at this stuff, or is he in love, bitch? Then Katniss and Peeta realize that Peeta has blood poisoning, which is fatal, which is when they get the announcement that there will be a feast because each team that is left in the arena desperately needs something, and Peeta is like, "I will not let you risk your life for me. If you do not go to that feast, I promise I won't die," which is not a promise he can make. So Katniss is like, "Sure, I won't go," and she's a bad liar, so Peeta knows that she's lying. And so Haymitch sends Katniss sleep syrup, and she puts them on berries and tells Peeta that they're sugar berries, and Peeta's eating them, and he's like, "Huh, it tastes kind of sweet, almost like syrup." And then he realizes, and then Katniss makes him swallow it in utter betrayal. She goes to the feast, almost gets killed, but gets saved by Thresh, and then she gets the antidote for Peeta's illness, injects him with it when she gets back, and passes out in a pool of blood because she was sliced across the head. And then it's at this point that Katniss explained to him everything that happened with Rue and Thresh, and Peeta was all like, "He let you go just because he didn't want to owe you," and she was all like, "You would get it if you lived in the seam," and he was all like, "Well, don't even try to explain, obviously I'm too dim to get it." And then Katniss is all like, "It's like how I can never stop owing you for the bread thing." And then Peeta was all like, "From when we were kids, I think we can let that go." And Katniss was like, "Why did you do it?" Anyway, like that whole thing with the bread, and Peeta was like, "Ugh, Haymitch said you would take a lot of convincing." And then Peeta was all like, "Why did you go to the feast?" And Katniss was all like, "Maybe I did it for myself. Maybe you're not the only one who thinks about what it would be like if..." And then Peeta said, "If what, Katniss?" he asked softly. And then she was all like, "That's exactly the kind of topic Haymitch told me to steer clear of." And then he's like, "Then I'll have to fill in the blanks myself," and kisses her. So they're having a little lover's paradise in the cave while there's a major storm raging on. He starts talking about when he first realized he had a crush on her, which was when he was 5 years old when he heard her sing, and then for the next 11 years he tried to work up the courage to talk to her, but failed to do so. He said, "I remember everything about you. You were the one who wasn't paying attention." The storm ends, Thresh ended up being killed by Cato, and then Katniss and Peeta go out to hunt, but because he was too loud, they split up, and then Katniss didn't hear Peeta like do the signal for that he was okay, so she goes rushing back to him, and it turns out he was just like busy, but she was like, "Oh my god, don't scare me like that, like why, like if we have a signal, you're supposed to do it." That's a pretty big reaction, Katniss, for just a friend. That's all I'm saying. And then Peeta accidentally kills Foxface with the nightlock he was collecting because she was like scavenging off of his berries. And then it's just Peeta, Katniss, and Cato left in the games. So then they deplete all the water sources, which means that they have to go back to the one which is by the cornucopia, and Cato ends up running to them, but he's actually running away from the mutations that are chasing them. It's like these killer wolf things that have the eyes of their past fallen tributes. They all climb on the cornucopia to get away from the mutations, and Peeta's leg ends up getting bitten by one of them, and then Cato puts him into a headlock, and Katniss is like, "What do I do?" And Peeta motions to shoot him in the wrist, which is the one place he isn't covered in body armor with, and she does so, and Cato falls to his doom, but it's actually not an immediate death, it's a slow, painful, drawn-out death that's going to haunt them for the rest of their lives. So then, you know, Katniss and Peeta are supposed to be the victors, it's supposed to be a happy time, but an announcement comes saying that there can only be one victor, and they're like, "Well, fuck." So Peeta's like, "Katniss, shoot me right now. I dare you. I double dog dare you. If you don't, I will literally bleed out. Just watch me, bitch." Katniss absolutely refuses to do that, so she's like, "If you're down, I'm down for a double suicide," and he's like, "Deal." So they whip out the nightlock that they've been carrying, are about to kill themselves when the announcement comes that they have both won the Hunger Games because the games need a victor. So then they get taken back to the Capitol, they get all cleaned up, Katniss's hearing in her left ear is restored, and Peeta gets a prosthetic leg because of the injuries that he sustained with the mutation biting and all. President Snow is angry because you are not supposed to be able to outsmart the games, outsmart the Capitol, outsmart the president. They have a final interview in which Katniss is asked when did she know that she was in love with Peeta, and she was like, "Well, I guess it was when they said that two victors can win, because for the first time there was a chance that I could keep him." And then Peeta was like, "Well, now that you've got me, what are you gonna do with me?" You rascal. And then they're on the train ride home, and Katniss has to come to terms with the fact that she had been telling herself that she has been faking it this whole time, this whole love thing with Peeta. And Peeta ends up finding out about this, and he was like, "Wait, bitch, you've been faking this whole time? Like, how much of it was fake? I guess what happens when we get back? I thought we were going to be like a silly little couple." And so naturally Peeta's really shaken up about this, and right before they're about to make their return to District 12, Peeta comes out, holds out his hand, and is like, "One more time for the audience." And that is where we're gonna leave off for today. Next week I'm gonna be recapping Catching Fire and Mockingjay. Those two books super slay. So be here for that. Thank you so much for coming with me on this journey today, and I'll see you next time. Bye!